Ready to go? Greetings and welcome to this edition of Causerie. Over today and tomorrow, we thought we will devote Causerie to introducing the young people who've joined the Department of English this year, get them to talk about their reasons for being in teaching, their research interests, as a kind of introduction to the larger community. So we begin today's session with a conversation with Pramod Harle, who joins our department this year. That will be followed by a conversation with Dr. Muthukumar, who will be with us shortly. Tomorrow, in the same series, we have a similar set of causeries, conversations with young staff. We have Mika Tambi, who has joined our department. Her causerie will be tomorrow at the same time at 4 p.m. And that will be followed by a conversation with Vinay BS, who is joining our department this year to aid us with communicative English and journalism. Right, let's get started without any further ado. Pramod, you've taken an interesting route to get here. You've worked in the corporate world, you've majored in chemistry, you chose a career in chemistry, at least to specialize in chemistry, and then switched to arts, to English, and studied at St. Joseph's Evening College, and you also cleared the UGC NET, which is not an easy exam to clear, right? And you're now working on a PhD at Kuvempu University while also teaching at St. Joseph's. You've just begun teaching this month, October, right? So I'd like to start this conversation by asking you one simple question. And that question is, what is it that interests you in the arts, in the humanities, in reading, in what is vaguely described as literature?
Right. So thank you so much for introducing me. And also right at the outset, I just want to tell everybody that I'm really happy to be a part of this department. And because I've always looked up to all of the teachers in this department through college, and like every time I've visited the department, I've really looked up at everybody in the department. And to be finally a part of this department and to be a part of like this amazing group of people is such an honor, and I'm really happy to be here. So to answer sir's question, it's essentially when I studied science, it was a very objective way of looking at the world, right? So where we looked at very specific things. It was always an impersonal way of looking at the world. But then when I started reading stories, reading literature, I suddenly felt very connected with the stories that were being talked about. There were certain nuances that I really liked. The things that I didn't really think were really important, like the class interactions, caste interactions. These were things that were like glossed over when you studied science. It's not a really important part. But then suddenly when you are reading like literature and all of these things become very important, very important to understand like our outlook and the world around us. So things like that were what attracted me to humanities. And then once I got into it, then it was just like I think the best decision of my life, really studying an MA and things like that. Yeah.
All right. That answers one question that nearly everybody is likely to be curious about. My second question is about your experience at St. Joseph's Evening College. You did your MA from there. Since I was part of the community that taught you there, I'm not going to ask you about your MA, what you learned in your MA and things like that. But St. Joseph's Evening College is a very unique sort of institution. It caters to an underprivileged section of society, to people who are in some sense unique also because they are paying in some sense for their own education. Unlike in most other colleges where an older generation is paying for the student. Okay? What was it like for you as a student in St. Joseph's Evening College?
So Like you mentioned, yeah, pretty much like all of the students there were working. They had like jobs in the morning and they would come evening to sit in class, right? It's not the easiest thing in the world to work a full day and then come sit in class. And like you mentioned, when you're paying for it, there's a certain onus on you to perform, to be a, like to really give it your best. And it's not easy, right? Like I said, you're tired one, and then to put up with all the assignments to make time for it, it's not easy at all. But I still think people are really passionate. There were people who were pursuing like dance and like different forms like performances, and they were really participating in the college. And I thought like the amount of hard work that they put in, like when I look back at my years of studying, when I was studying in like this college, it's a whole different environment, people working really hard. And looking back, I think I didn't put in the same effort like these people put in, and I was really fortunate and really privileged in a lot of ways. So it gave me a different like outlook, and I think it helped me look at the world a little more, like a little more, in a more nuanced lens, I guess.
Good. I hope a few of our students are listening to this, right? Especially those that tend to think that they have too much work. I've always felt that it'd be good to sort of airlift them into evening college and leave them in that environment for a month, where they'd have to hold a day job and then come and study in the evening. You're working on a PhD in Kuvempu University. You just started, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how you discovered your research interest and what you're hoping to do with it?
Right. So the area I'm looking into is around the festivities of the St. Mary's feast, essentially, that happens in Bangalore on September 8th every year. Right. So it is the festival that I was part of as like I lived. My family and we lived in Shivajnagar for many years when I was a teenager, and we were part of these festivities. And so that gave me a inside view about how the festivities take place, the different things that go on during this festival. And I thought that's something that needed to be explored a little bit. And with using like auto ethnography or interviewing people and bringing in different perspective, that was something I thought would be a really nice approach. And so that's the line I'm pursuing. Let's see, because it's a little more complicated this year with the pandemic and things challenging, like you can't really go and speak to elderly people and things like that. So there's a lot of challenges, but let's see how it goes.
Great. You're talking to us today on the topic microhistories around us. You have about 15 minutes in which to open up the ideas you want to share with us, and we'll take questions from the audience after that. Right? Thank you. Over to you.
Yes. I'll just share my screen now. So can you confirm if you can see it? Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay. So my presentation is essentially going to be just a whole lot of pictures. I'm going to be primarily talking about it. A few of the things that I'm going to be talking about is some of the things that we just spoke right now. I'm like things about science, things about St. Mary's, the Basilica and things like that. So yeah. Right, let's start by taking a look at this photograph. This picture, right? So this is a painting by Joseph Wright. So Joseph Wright did a lot of these amazing paintings with a single light source in the late 1700s. And this particular painting here, so in the background, you can see in the shadows, there are two young people. They're lost in their own thoughts and whatever they were doing in the background. And then suddenly realize there is this brilliant light. And so this one person is pointing at it, and the other youngster is just shocked at what he's seeing. And then in the foreground, we see this older person, the subject of our painting, right? So he is awestruck, he is scared, and he doesn't know whether to stand or kneel, or he's just genuinely all concerned. If you look at his face, he is He's looking up, God, is that you? He's genuinely concerned about what's happening. So the subject, this elderly man here, is Henrik Brand, right? So he's the alchemist Henrik Brand, and Henrik Brand is an interesting character. He burned through a lot of his family's savings trying to find the elusive philosopher's stone. So the philosopher's stone was something that alchemists across from antiquity tried to find. They wanted this object that could turn metals into gold, right? So he tried to find this philosopher's stone. He couldn't find it, and at some point in like 1669 he decided, okay, I desperately need gold, I'm going to extract it from the human body. So he found the most the golden liquid, the only golden liquid he could find. He found, so he obviously used urine, and then he collected enough urine and started boiling it. And over the course of like a few days, it started forming this very thick, like a paste, right? And a few of these fragments from this paste, when they the few of these fragments, they burnt like brilliantly, creating like the white light that you can see in the painting. So this beautiful white light that he had never seen before, and it burnt cold. It burned in such a way that the vessel itself was cold after it burned. So he called this object or this substance icy noctiluca, right? So the meaning, the cold night light. So what this substance was, and it immediately after this became incredibly famous, was a substance called phosphorus, right? Phosphorus was, I mean, since then has been used from everything from matchsticks to LED bulbs that we're sitting under, and even it was even used in the bombs that flattened the city of Hamburg, the same city that Brand discovered phosphorus in. So it was stories like this that I listened to and I had read, which got me really interested in science. I was really curious about scientists, chemists, and how they discovered various elements, various processes. So when I joined science, in the undergrad course, what I saw was just primarily reactions, derivations, and like even the syllabus was filled with things like that. But somehow, despite hating all the theory of it, I ended up working in a lab that was doing researching material science, right? So I began researching this compound that you can see on screen. It's called the layer double hydroxides. So layer double hydroxides are essentially sandwich-like compounds where they have a little space in between. So the gist of my research work was essentially to replace the filling in this sandwich. Right, so we would take and remove these orange and green balls and try to put in different other components and other chemicals into this little space. But the space in between this, like to use the coronavirus as a reference, is like 100 times smaller than the coronavirus. So we're talking about really, really tiny spaces in between these component in this compound, right? And so even though it was incredibly interesting, like working with layer double hydroxide, it was just really complicated. And so my work would involve, first we would have to synthesize these. My work in the lab was, first we'd have to synthesize these these molecules, and then we would synthesize them as like a nice powder. So we take 1 spoonful of this powder and then perform various reactions with them. So various reactions, like we'd boil them with different chemicals, we'd microwave them, we would stir them, and we would try so many different processes. And then a lot of times they would just fail right away, and sometimes they would give us a little hope and then they would fail. So it was always back to the drawing board, go read some research articles, look at various different things, and then come back, change a few variables and try again, and then fail again. Okay, and then try and try and try. Right? I mean, research is like something that requires incredible perseverance, but this, I think, was like a Herculean task, right? Like you would have to be incredibly committed to something like this, and it was something that I didn't find myself really motivated to be a part of, because one, I missed the stories of it. Like layer double hydroxides were found in nature, so there was no discovery story, there was no stories around it. I mean, I missed that, and then so at some point I had to like give up this part of my life and move out of chemistry. And a little later, a friend of mine introduced me to this book. So this book called Nine Lives by William Dalrymple. So Nine Lives is like as the title suggests, it's like a really interesting book where William Dalrymple, he looks at nine lives in the subcontinent, and lives of Jain nuns or Tayam dancers, or like women in Sufi dargahs. And so these stories, I don't know, it rekindled my interest in stories, in literature. And like I was telling sir right now, it got me in. I joined like an MA program. Of course, I would say I wanted to read more, so I joined it, but then I would be lying. So yeah, I joined an MA program and I started reading. And one of the things that immediately you join an MA program and boom, you're hit with literary theory. And I was thinking, this is the same old story where you're hit with a lot of theory. But fortunately, I was introduced to other books like the second one here, Salt, the World History. So Salt was another incredible book that was mentioned in class, where we look at the book looks at the history of salt, something so trivial, so common, like something that nobody would think twice about, had like a 5,000-year-old history. So that was incredible. It started, like, of course, we know about Gandhi's civil disobedience movement that was centered around salt, right? The salt itself had so many stories to tell. And also books like Following Fish by Saman Subramaniam. So again, this book looks at fishing, eating fish, and all the hangama that people do with fish in India. And I thought it was an incredible book, and it looked at fish from a whole different perspective. It opened me up to different ideas about objects, essentially. And side note, I have come across Saman Subramaniam, like I've seen him in passing, and I always wanted to tell him that what an incredible book you've written. But yeah, somehow I've never gotten around to telling him that. So one for some, if I see him again sometime, right? So yeah, books like these, like stories and of objects and like people, that really got me thinking about like the stories of simple objects around us, simple objects and places essentially around us. Places like Delhi and other places have like, or Delhi has like a 1,000-year-old history of being the capital of a place and things like that. But places like Bangalore have a little more. The history of Bangalore is a little more tougher to get into. It's a little more, if you have to really dig deep into the archives to find good sources of Bangalore's history. So one of the things that I found and like that was really interesting was this article by Lakshmi Srinivas, that she talks about cinema halls in Bangalore, right? So one would assume that cinema, the what the experience of watching cinema in Bangalore was a very simple, straightforward, homogeneous experience, right? But supposedly, I mean, from her research, it's pretty evident after she spoke to like so many people, and she looked at like the duality in like the cinema watching experience in Bangalore. So she observed that when she spoke to a lot of people, she found that the old city, the places around Kempegowda Road and that region of the city was like what people commonly went to watch local cinema, Kannada cinema and things like that. And so people she spoke to mentioned how there were like 50, 60 cinema halls in that one place where people would come from out of station just to watch movies at the theaters there. And then she also talks about how the cantonment region had like cinema theaters like Plaza around MG Road and things like that, where people came to watch English cinema. And there's a small part where she talks to someone, and she talks to one of the teachers, and the teachers mentioned that young boys would go stand out to look at all the pretty people that coming out of the cinema theaters. And so I began to wonder, like, places like Bangalore, even though they don't have like a very storied past, had like this very nuanced history where like small things like watching a movie had so much background that one could explore and read into, right? So then that got me thinking about my own history. And one of the things that I was introduced at this juncture was autoethnography, right? Autoethnography was like the tool I didn't know I needed. It was essentially bringing my narratives into the picture, bringing my stories. And it's a really interesting tool, and it's something that we can bring in, and I think we can annoy a little few of these historians and researchers, the conventional ones, who find it very annoying when you suddenly make an appearance in the narrative, right? So yeah, things like autoethnography suddenly became very, very relevant and really useful. So one of the things that in my life, that played like a very central role was living around St. Mary's Basilica. Right. So St. Mary's Basilica, for people who don't know, is like one of the cultural centers, one of the most important institutions in Bangalore. It's a seat of where a lot of Catholics go to worship, place where there's a very important shrine devoted to Mother Mary and things like that, right? So, so from my experience of living very close to this massive church, this huge center of influence, was that my family story suddenly became very, very relevant. All the times that we went to church late at night, not just to pray, but to just sit around, to chill out, to say, for the lack of a better word, right? So to go there and then to look and to just experience it. So then the role of the church as a space that brings a family together suddenly became very, very apparent when I was looking into this history of this church. So the other thing that about the history of the church is the history that you will find in, like, say, the church website or Wikipedia, is that it was built in 1803 by this French priest called Jean Antoine de Bois. And the Gothic structure that you can see in the picture, that was built by Father E.L. Kleiner and completed in 1882. The 1882 is the same year that our college was founded by the French foreign fathers, right? So, and then in 1973, this church was elevated to the status of a minor basilica, and continues to remain as one of the great seats of Marian devotion, and for the general population who comes to worship and pray for good health. Right. So the things that's missing in this narrative, in that broad history, is stories about how the shrine, this church, the entire complex evolved slowly over time. It never started out as a place of worship where thousands of pilgrims would throng during the festivals and during the feast days. Right. It started as a small, as any other church would be. And so this place slowly grew. And one of the people that talking to like a lot of people, I found out that Father Jabamalai was one of the people central and very, very important in transforming this complex into a place where a lot of people could come and worship. So yeah, this is Father Jabamalai. I found a really nice picture of him holding up one of the books by Jean de Bois. I screenshotted this from one of the YouTube videos. Right. So Father Jabamalai, my family and I, we crossed paths with Father Jabamalai a few times. Right. Father was the parish priest when we were part of this parish. When we were living in Shivajnagar, and Father used to sit outside his parish office in the evenings, and he would talk to people, and he always seemed very, very serious, and I somehow didn't have the courage to go and talk to him, because I guess I was a little too young, and I didn't know the role he played in transforming this place, right? So the only thing that I found really interesting was, here was like a church that was devoted to Mother Mary and devoted to the praying to Mother Mary, right? And the priest who was leading this place, the person in charge of this place, was called Jabamalai, and the Tamil word for rosary, which I found was really interesting, that it was a lovely mix of two things that came together perfectly, right? So then last year, when I was looking into the history of the church, and so one of the people I had to talk to was Father Jabamalai, and so I went to the Little Sisters of the Poor, the campus on Hosur Road, where the elderly priests stay, so I went and spoke to him, and So the moment I was really nervous, here's this like rock star level priest where he's like really famous and really popular across the archdiocese. Everybody knows him. For his work in like in the basilica, in the work that he did in constructing the Infant Jesus Shrine and various different places. Yeah, I think he was part of the archdiocese for about 50 years. It's like nobody's been like that and so devoted to the cause of the archdiocese. So when I went to him and I introduced myself, he smiled and he was so welcoming that I was immediately at peace. And then we talked at great lengths about like the basilica, the renovation that had to be done, the various different things. And Father was about 88 at that time, and he had like an impeccable memory. He could remember all of these things from like 40 years ago, and he was talking to me in such detail. And like I don't have time to get into all of those things, but like a few of the things that he told me was when the shrine had to be built, a few of the buildings had to be brought down. And there was a lot of opposition for it because people didn't want like any of the old buildings to be like brought down, and they just wanted, okay, let's just adjust with what we have. And that wouldn't do, because if you wanted to cater to like thousands and millions of people visiting your shrine, you needed a bigger place. And that was something he had to deal with. Also, the things that he had to deal with was, Father called it, the church was built in gare, is what Father said. So gare is essentially simple mortar, the plastering work that's done. So the church would be painted every year, and by the end of the year, the paint would just peel off. And so when he became the parish priest here, he took up extensive renovation work. He did like, he got the entire like the church replastered, and so that, and added marbles to the floor and various different things like that. One of the things that I was very curious when I talked to him was, when he started talking about all of these things, was I noticed there were these fiberglass murals that were like copper colored, and they were placed at the back of the church, behind the church building. It was a very odd place for these murals to be placed. I mean, you would, if you did something so elaborate, you would place them somewhere more centrally, somewhere in the front of the church, somewhere close to some like important like a door in the church or something like that. But it was weird. So I asked him about it, and he told me about the background of this particular mural, right? So he told me about how this mural was made by the same people who made the massive nativity mural at Infant Jesus Shrine. And he told me about how this had to be bought in from Bombay. And so the mural itself, it depicts like a scene from the prodigal son, right, the parable of the prodigal son. And so he told me that it was intentionally placed at the back of the church because it was facing the chapel of reconciliation. So when people went to give their confessions, and when they came out, the first thing that they would see is this mural. And he said it was something that was so simple that people could immediately resonate with, and they could feel that they were forgiven, they were welcomed back, even though if people felt really bad about whatever like they had to confess about, then they would be back in a world where they felt accepted. It was all right to be back here, right? So lots of interesting stories. And yeah, unfortunately, Father Jamamale passed away in August this year. And so I would have liked to go and visit him again and ask him like 100 more stories that since then I've come and like I've realized and I've been wondering about. But yeah, unfortunately, I have to do with all the stories that he told me and stick to and research these stories, right? Okay, so in my opinion, these micro histories of the priests, the pilgrims, the parishioners, okay, the various nuns and religious people who are part of the church, all of these people, even the objects around the church like statues, the murals, all of these things have really interesting stories, really interesting micro histories. And all of this adds to the greater history, the larger history of St. Mary's Basilica, right? So, and I think all of this, and even the history of the church, it again pieces itself. And like you can look at the history of the Catholic history in Bangalore. So all of this leads to a larger, broader history, but all of that is comprise, all of this is made up of these small parts, and these small micro histories are hence very essential to this narrative building and this huge history that we have, this broader history that we have, right? So in the other thing is, in last year when this British poet called Roger Magoo was speaking to BBC Two, he was talking about humanity, and then he mentioned, he made this comment which went like, uh, so when humanity, as far as humanity is concerned, there is just one poem, one canvas created by billions down the ages. We write that poem, paint that picture to be added to an infinite jigsaw puzzle that we will never live to see complete. Right? It's a lovely thought, and I think it makes so much sense in such a massive canvas. Uh, Different branches of social science, the social sciences, it makes sense why they have to generalize and why they have to make such sweeping statements, even though like the nuances, the complexities are exposed only when we go into details in much closer observation, right? So looking at the details is when all of these things are exposed. But yeah, I think they have to stick to making sweeping statements only because they're looking at these massive, like trying to generalize with everybody involved, right? And I also like the metaphor of this collective canvas, because from it makes it I can picture that every human is like a thread that's intertwined with so many other human beings, covered with layers upon layers of environmental influences, and there's so many things that are coming together in this canvas that we are collectively creating. Also, personally, I think when I think about it along these lines, it makes my life, or at least my research life, come like my life has come like a whole circle, as in because from when I was looking at uh, interlayer chemistry to now looking at uh, like the interlayer of life essentially. And so yeah, it's an interesting thing that I have now, I'm dealing with now, right? So yeah, that is my experience of like the what working with micro histories and autoethnography and a lot of things.
Right. Thank you, Pramod, for that very engaging account of how you came to discover a research method and how it helped you interpret the conditions of your own life. I like the structure you brought to your talk, where one story led to another, and all of those stories were, in some way or the other, autobiographical. Right? The great demonstration of autoethnography at work. I think we are very lucky to have a recording of this, because we can use it when we want to illustrate how autoethnography can work in engaging with the public. I was also reminded of James Burke, the scientist. He at one point began this column in Scientific American called Connections, right? Where he would start with one story and then come back to that story after following up on a bunch of stories. Right? It later became a TV show as well. I was reminded of Connections as well when I was listening to your account of starting with an interest in the stories of science and coming back to this interest in stories at the level of microhistory. Right? One question that it's not really a question, it's more a bit of a hope. I'm hoping you have recorded your interactions with Father Jabamale, because Father Jabamale is somebody I remember from my own childhood. He used to be secretary and correspondent at St. Xavier's Boys High School when I was a student there. And I think he must have also been officiating at St. Mary's Church, because he would constantly be in and out of our school campus on a little, he had a TVS 50 in those days. So it was the first time I'd seen a priest riding a TVS 50. So that picture is very vivid in my head even now. I'm hoping you've managed to record some of these conversations, because sometimes these conversations have little curls and curlicues and little, gullies and dead ends, much like Shivajinagar itself does, that you might want to go back and explore at some point. Right? The question I'm going to ask you is about this aspect that you mentioned in your presentation. For most of us who live in Bangalore, St. Mary's Feast is some 8 days in August, September, when Shivajinagar bus routes are so disrupted that there's a traffic spillover onto MG Road and to other places. Right? As a child, however, I remember wandering through those, through the different place that Shivajinagar became. And I've always been curious about all the other things that happened there. Right? There's a sort of festive marketplace thing that settles around the basilica. Right? What have you noticed? What do you remember from your childhood? Has that changed in any way? Could you give us a quick response to this aspect of, the buzz around the basilica?
Right. Yes. Okay, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So yes, so I have recorded like that one conversation I had with him. We spoke at length for like an hour and a half, and so it's a really interesting, lovely recording that I have. And he was talking about St. Xavier's School, and when I was speaking about like these renovations, one of the things that he mentioned was all the marble had to be kept in St. Xavier's School, so and then slowly had to be moved to the church and things like that. The thing, there are lots of things that I noticed during the 8 days, the 8-9 days of the festivities that take place during St. Mary's Feast, right? So among the things, the main thing is on the final day is the car procession, the tear as it's called locally, right? So one of the things that you observe and you see is that all these dangling wires everywhere, and one of the ways that they get over it is by hoisting like these T-shaped rods. They lift it up, and from both sides they raise up 2 T-shaped poles, and then they raise up and lift these wires above the tear so that the tear can go underneath it. And there are lots of these small things that like you notice because you're standing around being part of it. And unfortunately this year there wasn't a big festival. Everything was virtual. From like the flag hoistings to all the festivities, everything was virtual. A few people tried to go to the church, but then the church was closed off for the 10 days around the feast, right? So a lot of these things, even the things like people are not only Catholics that come to the basilica during the feast days. It's just anybody and everybody, like people wearing different clothes, different looks. They seem to be from all over the country, different religions. Everything is like one. They come with a devotion with the prayer for good health. And I think good health is something that is very, very central to Bangalore's goddess deities and things like, and various shrines that are there in Bangalore, right? So even Bangalore's own Annama, the goddess that is taken in procession to different parts of the city, is essentially a devotion or a devotion for good health. And so that's the same devotion that people bring to the basilica, because they feel like Mother Mary is part of this group of goddesses that the people worship in Bangalore. And a lot of these things that I would love to speak about in like great detail, but I'm a little limited right now.
Thank you. That was most illuminating, this notion of St. Mary's Basilica as a site of everyday syncretism. The T-shaped poles are something that I remember as well from my own childhood. Okay? Great. Thank you very much, Pramod, for a wonderful presentation. Right. it's also time to formally welcome you to the department. I hope you're able to spend many years of reading and research in the department. Thank you very much. We'll just quickly check if there are questions, however, before we close and go on to the next presentation. I'll just check the YouTube chat to see if we have anything. There's a comment from Professor Melvin Colasso, who remarks that you still connect well with science. So I think that was made as an observation more than a question. Some comments complimenting you on the presentation. Okay, there is a question. Shivajinagar is predominantly a Muslim area. How do the Muslims view a huge church like St. Mary's Basilica in their midst?
Right. So the thing that we'll have to understand is the word Maria in the Quran is Maryam, and she's one of the few people who's mentioned in the Quran. And so for Muslims and people of the Islamic faith who live around the area, she's very much a part of their tradition too. Right, so she is not looked at somebody who is alien or different. Of course, there have been conflicts and things where, like, the church has been damaged with riots and things like that. But then I don't think that is that's the direction that general population. It was few stray incidents, right? But I think the focus that we can look at this through is the focus that she is somebody is very much who's part of their tradition, whose stories are present in the Quran, and one of the few women who's mentioned in the Quran, right? So that I think is why people feel they're very much at home, they're very happy to go to the church, etc.
Great. I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you all those who listened into the presentation. Thank you, Pramod, for a great presentation. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker today is Dr. Muthukumar, who joins us after a PhD at National Institute of Technology, Trichy. He's worked on the Northeast and is today talking to us on the topic From Secession to Infusion, look at the troubled history of the Northeast. Right? Welcome, Dr. Muthukumar. Welcome formally to the Department of St. Joseph's College to this occasion where you will be presenting on a topic that you have worked on for many years. Right? But I thought we'd start with a little bit of conversation. You have a PhD from a very interesting location, right? From
Yes.
the National Institute of Technology in Tiruchirappalli. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that first. What is it like being a representative of the humanities in a bastion of technical education or technology education?
So I joined the institute way back in 2014. So during that time, humanities is not a great discipline in the institute. So we were relatively a new department. We started our department by 2002, and we became independent department in 2007. So it's a very new department. So for every matter we have to fight with the institute. We have to raise our voice to make things work for our favor. So they won't understand because they are from the technology background. So we have to make our case. We have to struggle and make our case. Now the things are slowly changing because we have got an MA program launched this year. So with lot of struggle, this MA program was launched. So the department is slowly making its way into the institute. Interestingly, the B.Techs are very interested in the humanities department, because they do a lot of electives and other stuff. But it is very difficult to convince the management, that is the administration. So that is where the challenge lies. About B.Tech students, we don't have any problem because for them engineering is very difficult. So so they will come to humanities. They take a lot of course, all those stuff. So this is the makeup of the department in the institute, sir, at present. Yeah.
My second question to you is about this little journey you've made from a state university to a centrally administered institute. Right? That gives you a very unique perspective onto the state university system in India. Right? Now, many people tend to write it off and see it as a venture that is doomed from the beginning because it is located inside the discourse of social justice, inside the discourse of affirmative action, making reservations work for people who are otherwise cut out from education and so on. Right? But as a student traversing these terrains, right, what are some of the things you noticed, both your MA and your PhD?
Yes, sir. See, though I studied in centrally funded institution, I'm always with the model that the state university follows, because India is a country where you need a lot of affirmative actions and reservations, stuff like that, for the betterment of the underprivileged. You need to cover everybody. The responsibility of the government is not to pick the best one. They have to accommodate everybody. It should be of welfare model. So I always say the government is not an employment agency or MNC company who can just hire the best and leave the rest. So that is a problem in the centrally funded institution. But the problem is slowly now coming to the state universities also, because of the entrance examination, because of other, for example, recently in Tamil Nadu we have the issue of Anna University getting the Institute of Eminence. So the Institute of Eminence says, the clause says that you should not have greater reservation, you should not have greater affirmative activities, all those things. So if you do that, we will give Institute of Eminence. So this is a very precarious situation, and the government is thinking about this, and we all want Institute of Eminence is just for 5 years, but this affirmative action has lifted many people from the dooms of poverty or discrimination, and this must continue actually. That is the stand I take. But quality-wise, I don't see the problem is in central universities, or in centrally funded institution, they push for publication of all those things. But in state universities, if we do that, automatically we can bring quality. Quality is not that which must be brought by cutting reservation, by curbing the affirmative action. We can bring both hand in hand actually. So that is my perspective.
Yeah. So interesting perspective. I hope to be able to discuss it with you at greater length. I'm fascinated by this connection they're making between getting Institution of Eminence status and having to work by centrally administered reservations. That seems to be the bone of contention there.
That is because in Tamil Nadu we have 69% reservation. So that is the.
It's a constitutionally protected.
Yes, sir.
right to reservation.
Yes, sir.
So it's something they're bound to actually respect, but it's interesting to see that it has become a tool of some kind of blackmail as well. How did you happen to get interested in the Northeast?
It happened accidentally. That was when I was working for my MPhil, I accidentally stumbled on a novel by Eastern Kire. It is Bitter Wormwood.
Yeah.
So I just I just got the novel. I just googled the novel and got a summary of it, and it is interesting. It was about the whole Indo-Naga conflict. And when I read the novel, then I came to understand that there is a whole new area there, which the general public is not aware, because we are more aware of Kashmir than the Nagas. Because Kashmir features in the general discourse, in news, in every in every media coverage, but about Nagaland it is very limited. The coverage is very limited, and we don't know what is happening. And this Indo-Naga conflict was a new opening for me, and I started working on MPhil, working my MPhil on this novel, focusing on violence. Then I thought, okay, we can work on in the Northeast, for my PhD also. So it is that way I ended up in Northeast, and I'm from this part of the land, Tamil Nadu, and we also have this problem of resistance to the center, not like Northeast, but in a more constitutional way, or in a more we stress for greater autonomy, all those things. So that way I found this bit interesting, sir.
Yeah. Okay. I like the connection you're making about a kind of federalist imagination reaching across from Tamil Nadu to Nagaland and other states in the Northeast. It's an interesting connection. Right, Dr. Muthukumar, we'll go straight into your presentation. I like the two terms you're using, secession and infusion. For most of us, the term infusion belongs to the language of making tea and, creating medicinal broths and so on. So I'm very curious to see how you're going to be using the term. So the way we'll work this is you can speak for about 15 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions for about 5 to 10 minutes. Right? Okay. Over to you. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. So today I will just tell a narrative to before talking about the Northeast. So the narrative is when I travel from imagine when I travel from my native place to Bangalore. In the middle of the night, I was suddenly abducted by the ghost, and I'm I'm taken to the world of ghost, and I'm destined to be in that world, in the world of demons. I try my level best to liberate myself. I fight for my independence. I try to free myself from that space. But my fighting is being challenged by the violence that the ghosts meted out on me. And this process continues for a long time. And at a point, I decide that okay, enough is enough. We cannot move out of this world of ghost. We should try to adjust and live within this world of ghost. And this decision comes out because of the violence that was meted out on me, and this violence has weakened my struggle. So and then I decide to stay within that world of ghosts. And the moment I decided to stay, I start another fighting. That is, I want a more space within that world of ghosts. I'm fighting for my my space, because I find that the ghosts are discriminating against me, and this makes me to fight by using the force that they imported on me. That is, they asked me to stay, they forced me to stay within the world of ghost, and I used that opportunity, that is that forcibly conferred membership to fight against the discrimination that they met against me. So this is the story I just want to tell before I go into the Northeast. So this same paradigm can be used to see the journey of Northeast from secession to infusion. So when the country was independent, we know we know the partition and the unification of India, and this unification happened in different ways. For example, Hyderabad was forcibly unified within the nation state of India. Similarly, the Northeast, many parts of the Northeast was forcibly unified within the nation state of India. And Nagaland, you have the issue, that is they want separate a nation state, and you have a whole struggle going on. And you have you have a secessionist motive, a fight for liberation in the Northeast, and this goes for a long time, and suddenly a critical turn happens. That is, after 2000s, you have a huge number of Northeasterners, young Northeasterners migrating to cities like Bangalore, Delhi, Chennai, all the big cities for different purpose, that is to study and then to work. So they try to find economic and social opportunities in India, in the rest of India. And this, when they do this, when they come from their home to these cities, they get discriminated, and they are called by names, and they are thought as outsiders. So when this happens, there emerges a different kind of discourse which contradict the earlier said secession. That is, the new discourse. In the new discourse, the young Northeasterners says that we are also Indians. We belong to this country. So like that, this kind of turning of discourse takes place. So they want more space within the mainstream in different walks of life, in popular imagination, in for example in school history textbooks. That is a very important problem that the Northeast now rise. That is the lack of representation of Northeast in the school history textbook. And you have this discrimination goes on, and variety of killings took place against the Northeast. That is, in 2014 we had Nido Tania, student from the state of Arunachal Pradesh, who gets killed by a group of people from from a shop in New Delhi. And this this brings a shock among the youngsters of Northeast, and there is a huge protest, and you also have a huge exodus of northeastern students around the country to their home, fearing some threats against them in, I think, in the year 2012. So when these happens, you have the youngsters who voices who uses this forcibly attributed national identity on them to question back the nation, to question back the the legitimacy of the nation state that did not allow them to secede. So you have a very strange ambivalence here. That is, the nation state does not want the Northeast to secede. At the same time, you have people discriminating the Northeast, and you have underrepresentation of the Northeast in the history textbooks. And so the Northeast now uses this forcibly conferred national identity and questions the general public of the rest of India and the state itself, because it does not take adequate measures against this discrimination, and it has not taken adequate measures for representing the Northeast in the history textbooks. Now after the huge huge protest, all those things, you have a supplement published by NCRT on the history of Northeast. But my argument again is why why this as a supplement. So again to bring the idea of supplement, that is, when you put something as a supplement, then you accept that there is something lacking in the original. So when you make Northeastern history as a supplement, and when you do not want to mingle the Northeastern history within the general history books, then there is again problem with the supplement. So I my thesis was about this ambivalence, this turning of the discourse. So I used this Eastern Curry's bitter wormwood to speak about secession in the Nagaland especially, and then I used poetry, that is Northeast Indian poetry, to speak about the cultural assertion that Northeast speaks. That is, certain groups in Northeast, they are not against the political boundary of India, but they say that we need cultural autonomy, we need our rights, land to be protected. So this I speak with the help of Northeast Indian poetry. And coming to this discrimination, I used lot of television debates that took place in NDTV, Times Now, and all the national televisions when Nido Tanya was killed in the year 2014. So I used those debates to analyze the discourse of discrimination, and how this entire discourse turns from secession to infusion. And I used NCRT history textbooks, the 6th, 7th, and 8th history textbooks, and also the supplement to speak about how Northeast history is underrepresented, and even in the supplement how the history stands aloof. The state couldn't bring a unity within the history, that is of the rest of India and the Northeast. So I used these sources to speak about this ambivalence, or this paradox, or this turning from secession to infusion. So that was my work in my PhDs. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Muthukumar, for that brief but very enlightening discussion. I find the implications that you're talking about extremely interesting, because from what you're saying, you're pointing to the fact that activism in the Northeast, or the culture of protest and resistance in the Northeast, highlights two contradictions in what we might call the history of nationalism in India. Right? One contradiction being that nationalism is caught in its own rhetoric when it comes to the Northeast, because you can't be nationalist and say you're fighting a colonial power and then say you want to inherit the extra miles of territory that a colonial power added to the nation. Right? That is one contradiction that they keep exposing. Right? It goes back to the Treaty of Yandabo in the 19th century, right? At which point the territories that we call the Northeast today became part of, a good number of the states of the Northeast became part of India after that conflict. Right? So nationalism thus is about talking about a glorious history of struggling for freedom, while at the same time glossing over the fact that we have no problems inheriting the benefits of certain colonial adventures. Right? The second contradiction that it seems to offer nationalism is, on the one hand, you want to enforce a national identity, right? The identity of being part of the structures of a nation state or a region, but at the same time, you don't want to share the benefits. Right? The benefits are a problem, and the discourse of nationalism is so incomplete that it does not open up to make room for aspirations of young people. It doesn't seem to, at least, make room for that. Right? So those two challenges that it offers us, right, are very interesting, because in the high decibel debates that are conducted right now in public fora, right, the attention is always about who is anti-national, or who is a traitor, or who is dangerous to the community, without looking at the sort of dangerous adventure that nationalism, or the advocates of nationalism, have themselves embarked upon. Right? So that set of implications is very well asserted. Right? Thank you for that presentation. The one question I want to ask you, since you said you looked at television debates.
Yeah,
right?
yes, sir.
Following the murder of Nido Tanya, right? Was there a kind of common thread that you found in these television debates? What is it that they seemed preoccupied with? What is it that they seemed to ignore?
Yeah. See, one common thread is that whenever, so there was a tendency that you have both the national representatives from the beginning, they tried ignoring this death as a case of racism. So they tried to ignore this death as a case of racism, and they tried to portray this as a law and order problem. So they tried to move this from the discourse of racism to a discourse of law and order problem. That is, that is a common thread. And you have Northeast, representatives from the Northeast, who construct this, killing or as a racist, outrage. So you have this, debate, between whether this killing is racist or is it a law and order problem. That was there. But one important thing is that when the Northeast started protesting, it had an effect in the television debate. That is, when there was huge protest, even the national representatives started accepting the fact of racism in the death. But the clever thing that they do is that the party, for example, if it is BJP, the clever thing they do is that they blame the Congress for the death, and the vice versa. So they accept the racist aspect of the killing, but they don't want to take a responsibility for that racist attack. So there is this is the common thread that I can find in all the discourses, all the debates.
Okay, that's an interesting point you're making about a certain deflected responsibility, where you say, yes, it's happening, but no, it's the guys before us who are responsible for what is happening. Right? Great. Thank you for that response. We'll check if there are questions from our audience. While we wait to see if there are questions, I'm also curious about another aspect that you mentioned while talking about people adjusting to the idea of the national presence in the Northeast. Does the nation state become wittingly or unwittingly a mechanism for justice in a landscape where the idea of the ethnic homeland is present and is sometimes problematic?
So I just forgot to tell one point that this adjustment happened because of the violence that the nation state imported on these communities who fought for this secessionist struggle, and that weakened their struggle, and they were forcibly taken to the negotiation tables. So you should not forget that, actually, because when we say negotiation, we all think that it is happening in a peaceful manner. No, I know you have a lot of power struggle within that, and how the all the groups are brought, and the Indian nation state or any nation state is very good in creating a factionalism within the struggle itself. So for example, the Naga struggle, you had n number of faction, and the nation state always used that faction to its advantage. So these made it is a forcible turnaround. So that we have to remember. And now they are using the Northeast is using this forcibly conferred citizenship to their advantage. They try to bargain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a good point. But my curiosity is about what happens to minority communities. Right now, take the example of the Cookies, right?
Yes, sir.
Smar communities.
Yeah, yes.
What sort of articulations do we hear from
I understand, sir. I understand.
That are menaced in some sense by somebody else's idea of a homeland?
Yeah, yes. So that is a big problem in the Northeast. That is, you have a dominant tribe, dominating the so-called the state or the homeland, and you have the problem of the minorities within that homeland. So again, that is a pressing problem, and what generally happens is that minority community will align with the nation state, actually. So you have this kind of political engineering takes place.
Okay. We'll just check if there are questions. All right, there are several comments complimenting you on your presentation, but we don't seem to have any questions. Right? I'm sure the questions will come in due course. Right? Thank you once again, Professor Muthukumar, for that very succinct presentation and for your quick responses to all these questions. Right? Welcome to the department formally.
Thank you, sir.
We hope
I'm very happy.
We hope you have many good years of reading and research in the department.
Sure, sir.
That this causerie can be the first of many such conversations in the future. Right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank
you, sir. Thank you, sir.
That's
I'm very happy to be part of the Joseph family. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Before we close, a quick reminder of tomorrow's causerie. We have Professor Mika Thambi, who will be addressing us first, followed by Professor Vinay B.S. That's at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. We hope to have you back with us tomorrow as well. Thank you.